You've seen her dismiss better-looking men than you. You've watched her politely decline guys with more money, better jobs, smoother lines. She's not rude about it. She's just uninterested. And then there's that one guy, he's not remarkable on paper. But when he walks in, something shifts in her posture. Her phone goes down, her attention locks. She laughs differently. She leans in. What does he have that you don't? The answer will make you uncomfortable. It's not what you think. It's not his looks, though she'll rationalize it that way later. It's not his money, though that helps create the illusion. It's something invisible. Something most men never develop because they don't know it exists. He understands the frequency that women who ignore average men operate on, and you've been broadcasting static. The dating world splits cleanly down the middle. On one side, men who work hard, who are respectful, who try to do everything right and wonder why it leads nowhere. On the other, men who seem to break every rule and have women competing for their attention. You've been told this second group is just lucky, just assholes, just blessed with genetics. That's a comforting lie. The truth is they know something you don't. Niccolo Machiavelli didn't write The Prince to teach cruelty. He wrote it to decode power, to reveal the mechanics underneath the theater. He saw that human beings respond to specific triggers regardless of what they claim to value. Women who ignore average men aren't shallow or broken. They're operating on evolutionary programming that rewards specific signals. If you don't know the signals, you're invisible. If you master them, you become inevitable. What follows will contradict every romantic notion you've internalized. It will challenge the advice your well-meaning friends gave you. It will make you question whether you want to be this kind of man. That hesitation is exactly why you're struggling. The men who attract these women don't hesitate. They don't apologize for understanding reality. They use it. In the next few minutes, you're going to learn the 13 laws that separate the men these women ignore from the men they can't stop thinking about. These aren't pickup lines. These aren't tricks. These are foundational principles of human attraction that have governed mating dynamics for millennia. By the end, you'll never look at a woman who ignored you and feel confused again. You'll see exactly where you failed, and you'll know precisely how to fix it. But understand this. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. You'll recognize these laws operating everywhere, in every interaction, every rejection, every success. There's no going back to ignorance. Are you ready? Let's begin. Law 1. Eliminate all supplication. The moment you try to win her approval, you've lost. Average men approach these women like they're applying for a position. They showcase their qualities. They try to prove they're worthy. They ask questions designed to demonstrate their value. I work in finance. I travel a lot. I just got back from the gym. This is, well, resume presentation. And she's not hiring. Women who ignore average men have abundance. They're approached constantly. Every conversation is an interview they didn't ask for. When you show up trying to impress, you're honestly indistinguishable from the 40 other candidates that week. The pattern is so predictable, she can simulate the entire interaction before you finish your opening line. Machiavelli observed that those who seek favor appear weak. Those who command it appear strong. The psychological principle here is called approach anxiety transfer. When you're trying to gain her approval, she subconsciously registers that you've already placed her above you in the hierarchy. Her attraction circuitry shuts down immediately, not because she's cruel, but because biology doesn't reward upward submission. So, here's the tactical shift. Enter every interaction assuming equality, not arrogance, just equality. You're not there to win her over, right? You're there to see if she's interesting enough to continue talking to. This isn't a performance, it's an evaluation. Ask questions because you're genuinely curious, not because you're trying to show interest. And, share things because they're relevant, not because you're building a case. When you remove the energy of seeking approval, when you show up as someone evaluating rather than applying, the entire dynamic inverts. She's now in the position of wondering if she measures up to your standards. That wondering is, the first step toward attraction. The critical caveat is this: it only works if you genuinely believe you're enough. If it's an act covering insecurity, she'll sense the desperation underneath the facade within minutes. Law 2 is all about mastering strategic indifference. From the very first moment, she's testing you, not in some calculated way, but, almost instinctively. Maybe she says she's busy this week, or she takes hours to reply to your texts, or she brings up other guys in conversation. Now, these aren't outright rejections. They're actually calibration tools. She's just, measuring how you react to a bit of uncertainty. Most average men, they panic. They end up double texting, trying to lock down plans, doing whatever they can to get her attention. They show, often without realizing it, that her lukewarm interest is making them anxious. And honestly, this anxiety just confirms her suspicion. He's not used to female attention. He's not the sort of man that other women want. In her eyes, he's only grasping because, she's his only option. But the men she doesn't ignore, they react entirely differently. They're just, unaffected. If she's busy, that's fine. So is he. If she takes hours to respond, he might take even longer. She mentions another guy. He genuinely doesn't care. Not because he's trying to play games, but because really he has options. Whether they're real or just potential, his life doesn't hinge on the validation of this one woman. This is called outcome independence. In behavioral psychology, your emotional state, it remains stable regardless of her response. Machiavelli actually wrote about the importance of appearing unshakable. Leaders who react emotionally to circumstances, they appear weak. But leaders who remain calm in chaos, they appear formidable. The application is discipline. When she does something that would normally trigger anxiety, you pause, you feel the emotion, then you choose not to act on it. You respond from a place of centeredness. She flakes on plans. No worries, we'll catch up another time. No passive aggression, no butthurt energy, just genuine indifference. What happens in her psychology is, honestly, critical. She's used to men who react, but when you don't, when you seem genuinely unfazed by her tests, you become anomalous. And anomalies, they trigger curiosity. Curiosity triggers investment, and investment, in turn, triggers attraction. Here's the thing. Indifference can't really be faked for long. If you're, seething inside while trying to act cool, she'll eventually pick up on that mismatch. So, it's honestly better to build a life so full and satisfying that her behavior just doesn't shake you, not even a little bit. Law number 3. Demonstrate pre-selection, but do it subtly. Women who might ignore average men are actually drawn to men that other women want. Now, this isn't shallow, it's just efficient. If other women have already vetted you and found you valuable, she doesn't have to start from scratch. Social proof is, without a doubt, the most powerful shortcut in human decision-making. Most average men tend to hide their interactions with other women, thinking it shows loyalty or focus. But actually, it just signals scarcity. When you have zero female presence in your life, when you never mention female friends, and she never sees other women engaging with you, you're basically signaling that women don't typically choose you. The men she notices are, casually surrounded by female energy, not in a harem-like way, of course, just in the natural way that attractive men exist. They have female friends. Women text them. When they're at a bar, women approach them. This isn't manufactured, it's actually the byproduct of being socially calibrated and attractive. The psychological mechanism here is called mate choice copying, and it's been documented extensively in evolutionary biology. When women observe other women showing interest in a man, it, validates his value. She doesn't have to wonder if you're attractive. Other women have already answered that question. The tactical move is this: don't hide your social reality. If a female friend texts you during a date, you don't ignore it conspicuously. You just glance at it naturally. If you run into a woman who knows you, you're friendly. You mention female friends in conversation the same way you'd mention male friends. It's not bragging, it's just your life. When she sees that women are comfortable around you, that they seek your company, that you speak their language fluently, something shifts. You're no longer an unknown quantity. You're a man who's been selected. And, selection breeds desire. The boundary, this cannot be weaponized jealousy. You're not trying to make her feel threatened. You're simply being honest about having a life that includes women. There's a massive difference between other women want me and look at all these women I'm juggling. Law 4. Create scarcity through absence. Average men believe that more time equals more attraction. They want to see her constantly. They text throughout the day. They're available whenever she suggests plans. This abundance obliterates their value. What's always available is never precious. Women who ignore average men are, busy. They have careers, hobbies, and social circles. They're not just sitting around, hoping someone texts. When you're always available, always responsive, always making time, you signal that you have nothing else competing for your attention. You're the guy with an empty calendar, just waiting for her to fill it. Machiavelli understood that strategic withdrawal creates longing. A prince who is always present becomes honestly a bit ordinary, but a prince who appears and disappears strategically, he becomes legendary. The same dynamic actually governs attraction. When you're genuinely scarce, when your time is legitimately limited, when she has to work around your schedule, your value really skyrockets. This isn't about playing hard to get. This is about being hard to get. Build a life so engaging that you genuinely can't see her whenever she wants. Have plans, have commitments, have a mission that, frankly, doesn't pause for romantic possibilities. When you do make time for her, it's a genuine gift of your scarcity, not just the default setting of your availability. The psychological effect is, profound. She starts to notice your absence. That noticing becomes wondering. What's he doing? Who's he with? Why isn't he texting? These thoughts, they occupy mental bandwidth. And whatever occupies the mind eventually influences the heart. Your absence creates a vacuum she feels compelled to fill. The application here is simple. After a great interaction, don't immediately schedule the next one. Let there be space. Let her wonder when she'll see you again. When she suggests plans, sometimes you're legitimately busy, not every time, but often enough that she realizes your schedule doesn't revolve around her. The nuance, and it's important, is that this only works if your scarcity is real. Pretending to be busy while sitting at home is, honestly, transparent. She'll sense the inauthenticity. Build the life first. The scarcity follows naturally. Law 5, challenge her reality. So average men, they agree with everything she says. They validate every opinion. They laugh at every joke. They're honestly terrified of creating friction because they think, agreement builds connection, but it doesn't. It builds contempt disguised as comfort. Women who ignore average men are, in fact, intellectually stimulated by disagreement, not argument, not disrespect, but genuine, thoughtful challenge. When everyone around her is nodding enthusiastically at her every word, just desperate not to offend, the person who respectfully disagrees becomes, magnetic. This taps into a concept called differentiation in psychology. Humans are attracted to people who have clear boundaries, distinct perspectives, separate identities. When you're a mirror reflecting her opinions back to her, you have no substance. You're just empty validation. But when you say, actually, I see it differently and explain a thoughtful counter-perspective, you become real. Machiavelli advised princes to seek advisors who would tell them hard truths, not comfortable lies. The same principle applies here. She doesn't want another sycophant. She's drowning in men who tell her what she wants to hear. When you're the one person willing to say, I think you're wrong about that, with respect and reasoning, you stand out categorically. The tactical execution, when she states an opinion, don't immediately agree. Pause. Consider. If you genuinely disagree, say so. Interesting. I actually think the opposite. Then explain your reasoning. Make her defend her position. Make her think. This creates intellectual tension, which is a form of chemistry. But here's the critical balance. Challenge with respect, not condescension. You're not trying to prove she's stupid. You're inviting her into a real conversation between equals. The difference between that's dumb and I see it differently is the difference between repulsion and attraction. The warning, pick your battles. Don't disagree with everything just to seem contrary. That's transparent. try-hard behavior. Disagree when you genuinely do, and agree when you genuinely do. Authenticity is the anchor that makes challenge attractive rather than annoying. Law 6. Never explain yourself. When you make a decision, when you set a boundary, when you do something she questions, average men immediately justify. I couldn't make it because I had this work thing, and then my friend needed help, and they over-explain because they're, well, afraid of her judgment. This explanation-seeking is really a confession of guilt. Men she doesn't ignore don't explain. They state, I can't make Tuesday. Period. No justification, no apology, no paragraph explaining why. When you justify your decisions, you're subconsciously asking for permission to have made them. You're positioning her as the authority who needs to approve your choices. Machiavelli observed that powerful people don't justify their actions to subordinates. They command, and the command itself carries authority. In attraction dynamics, the person explaining is the person seeking approval. The person stating is the person with self-authority. The psychological principle is frame control. Whoever's frame dominates, the interaction holds the power. When you justify your choices, you're entering her frame where your decisions need her validation. When you simply state your choices, you're maintaining your frame where your decisions are self-authorized. Law 10. Display social fluidity. Women who ignore average men watch how you interact with others. They notice if you're socially awkward, if you struggle to read rooms, or if you only know how to talk to them. Social intelligence is, honestly, one of the most attractive traits a man can possess because it signals genetic fitness and tribal value. Average men are either invisible in social settings or, well, try hard. They stand in corners hoping someone talks to them, or they dominate conversations seeking validation. Both patterns, frankly, scream low social calibration. Women assessing male quality are hyper-attuned to these signals. The men they notice move through social environments with ease. They talk to everyone. They read social dynamics accurately. They know when to talk and when to listen. They make people comfortable. They command respect without demanding it. This is called social proof through demonstration. When she watches you interact with a bartender, a stranger, her friends, your friends, she's gathering data. Can this man navigate social complexity? Does he understand hierarchy? Can he hold his own with high-status individuals? The answers to these questions matter more than your credentials. The tactical development practice social situations deliberately. Go to events alone and force yourself to talk to strangers. Notice who commands attention and study their behavior. Develop conversational skills not to impress her, but to become genuinely socially intelligent. This isn't performance, it's competence. When she sees you make a room laugh, when she watches high-status people respect you, when she notices others seeking your attention, her attraction amplifies exponentially. You're not telling her you're valuable. The social environment is confirming it. Law 11. Never apologize for desire. You know, average men tend to hide their sexuality. They're worried that expressing desire will offend her, make her uncomfortable, or maybe even reveal their true intentions. So instead, they pretend to want friendship while secretly hoping it evolves into something more. But this covert contract, honestly, is repulsive to women who have developed a sensitivity to it. Women who ignore average men are, in fact, attracted to men who own their desire unapologetically. Not crudely, not aggressively, but clearly. When a man can look at her and let his attraction show in his eyes, when he can create sexual tension without apologizing for it, when he can escalate physically with confidence, it triggers arousal. The psychological truth is that women want to be desired, but they want that desire to come from a man they respect. When desire comes from a place of neediness or desperation, it's, well, repellent. But when it comes from a place of abundance and confidence, it's intoxicating. Machiavelli wrote about the importance of bold action. Hesitation signals fear. Fear signals weakness, and weakness kills attraction. When you hesitate to touch her, to kiss her, to express your interest sexually, you're communicating that you don't believe you deserve her desire. The application is this: Express your attraction clearly and early, not through words, but through energy, through eye contact that lingers, through touch that escalates, through creating situations where sexual tension can build. You're not hiding behind friendship, you're making your intentions clear while giving her space to reciprocate or decline. The critical calibration is that expressing desire is not being pushy, it's being clear. If she's not receptive, you respect that boundary immediately. But you don't apologize for having tried. You're a sexual being. She's a sexual being. Pretending otherwise insults you both.
Law 12. Curate mystery strategically. She's used to men who reveal everything immediately. Their job, their goals, their insecurities, their entire life story spilled out in the first conversation. This frankly kills intrigue. Women who ignore average men are attracted to depth they have to excavate. The psychological concept here is information gap theory. Humans are wired to seek closure on incomplete narratives. When you reveal everything about yourself immediately, there's simply no story left to discover. But when you reveal yourself strategically over time, she stays engaged, trying to solve the puzzle. Average men think sharing creates connection. It does, to a point. But oversharing creates premature intimacy that feels unearned. When she knows your whole story after just 2 dates, there's nothing left to discover. The mystery is gone. And well, with it, the attraction. The men she doesn't ignore understand pacing. They share enough to create connection, but hold enough back to maintain intrigue. They have layers. She gets access to deeper layers based on her investment, not based on arbitrary timelines. The tactical execution is this: when she asks questions, answer them, but don't elaborate excessively. Share the surface. Let her earn the depth. Have aspects of your life you don't discuss early, places you go, things you do, people you know. Not because you're hiding them, but because they're private. Privacy is attractive. It signals you have boundaries. What this creates is sustained curiosity. She's always discovering new dimensions. Just when she thinks she has you figured out, a new layer reveals itself. This keeps attraction alive long past the initial spark. The boundary is clear. Mystery is not deception. You're not lying or being evasive when directly asked. You're just not volunteering your entire autobiography unprompted. There's a difference between being mysterious and being dishonest.
Law 13. Cultivate unshakable self-respect. And here, we arrive at the law that actually makes all others possible. To attract women who ignore average men, you must genuinely value yourself more than you value their approval. Your self-respect cannot be negotiable. Your boundaries cannot be flexible based on how attractive she is. Average men compromise their standards when faced with beauty. They tolerate disrespect. They accept inconsistency. They stay in situations that violate their values because they're afraid to lose access. This self-abandonment is visible, and it's quite frankly repulsive. The men these women don't ignore have a line. Cross it, and they walk. Not angrily, not dramatically, they just leave, because their self-respect is non-negotiable. Machiavelli's final wisdom was that those who lack self-respect cannot command respect from others. It's impossible to respect someone who doesn't respect themselves. This is the foundation everything else is built on. All the tactics, all the psychology, all the strategy collapses if you don't genuinely believe you deserve to be treated well. When you have real self-respect, you don't chase, you don't beg, you don't tolerate disrespect. You simply walk toward what values you and away from what doesn't. The application is radical. Be willing to lose her. Be willing to walk away from beauty if it comes with disrespect. Be willing to prioritize your peace over her presence. This isn't a bluff, this is genuine self-valuation. And paradoxically, this willingness to walk away is what makes you impossible to walk away from. When she encounters a man who genuinely values himself, who has standards she needs to meet, who will choose his dignity over her attention, everything changes. She's no longer evaluating if you're good enough for her. She's wondering if she's good enough for you. Stop, breathe, let these laws integrate. I know exactly what's happening in your mind right now. This feels cold, calculated, like I'm asking you to become someone unrecognizable. Like I'm teaching manipulation instead of connection. Here's what you need to understand. What I've shown you isn't manipulation, it's clarity. Women who ignore average men aren't evil, they're selective. They've developed sophisticated filtering mechanisms because they have to. If you don't understand those filters, you're invisible. If you master them, you're undeniable. These laws aren't about tricking anyone, they're about becoming the kind of man who genuinely attracts high-quality women because he's genuinely high quality. Everything I've described, mastery, self-respect, social intelligence, frame control, these are all traits worth developing regardless of romantic outcomes. The choice in front of you is simple. You can reject this information because it conflicts with what you wish were true. You can stay average and hope that someday a woman who ignores average men makes an exception for you. Or you can accept reality and upgrade yourself to operate at the level where these women actually select mates. Machiavelli didn't write about the world as it should be. He wrote about the world as it is. I'm doing the same. You can be angry at reality or you can master it. The 13 laws are your blueprint. Not for manipulation, for transformation. From invisible to inevitable. From ignored to irresistible. From average to exceptional. If you're finished making excuses, if you're done blaming women for having standards, if you're ready to become the man those standards were designed to filter for, then commit right now. Click the subscribe button. Not for me, for you. As a marker, the moment you decided to stop being average and start being undeniable. Welcome to the other side of the filter.